Was it all worth it?
Well, that's going to be the big question that Donald Trump is going to face as he goes to the voters next year. The big credential that he's trying to take as he faces impeachment in the House, the big credential that he's trying to take into the election year next year is his management of the economy and his rewriting of the rules of global trade and America's trade relationship. He's going to get the passage of a new North American free trade agreement through Congress. He has announced this phase one deal with China with these purchases, but what the president doesn't like to talk about very often is the damage that has been done and that economists have calculated as a result of these trade wars. He's talking about $200 billion in purchases over 2 years, everything from airplanes to chicken feet and pork chops, but if you tot up the economic damage that's been documented by folks ranging from the International Monetary Fund to the Congressional Budget Office here and our own economists here at Bloomberg Economics, you get a dollar figure that is much higher than that potentially. By the end of next year, our own economists calculate that you will get a lost GDP, lost economic output of more than $300 billion. And that, of course, continues as these tariffs remain in place. And the bulk of these tariffs will remain in place despite this phase one deal.
Shawn, so we still have to see the details of the deal, but so far from everything that we've heard, what's been the reaction in Washington and also from business groups?
Well, in a funny way, this deal, while we haven't seen the details, has managed to appease everybody in Washington, which in the age that we're in, that kind of age of great partisanship, is actually pretty rare. It has managed to appease the China hawks by keeping a lot of tariffs in place. It has managed to appease the business community by giving at least or signaling at least some progress in negotiations with the Chinese and some potential commitments on intellectual property and so on. And it's even kind of appeased a lot of the other critics in Congress who at least see some kind of pause in the trade wars ahead.
Shawn, one of the themes of this phase one deal that we've been analysing is that China is typically very good when it comes to abiding by the letter, if not the spirit, of agreements that it strikes. So in that regard, this idea of routing trade that usually goes to Hong Kong to the mainland instead, is that really abiding by the spirit of this deal?
Well, if you're giving Donald Trump the big number that he wants, it may be just enough to do that. We're going to have to wait and see what exactly we get in terms of increased purchases. As you're saying there, we've reported that the Chinese are going to reroute trade that is inevitably headed for mainland China from Hong Kong to mainland ports, and that will kind of boost the trade figures a little bit. They're also going to import more ethanol, we're hearing. There are going to be other measures that they're going to take. We're hearing processed foods are going to be part of this equation. So, look, we're going to be playing this game for a while. We're going to be keeping track of what the Chinese do. People here in Washington are very keen on one element of this deal, which is an enforcement mechanism, which would allow Donald Trump to put tariffs back in place or escalate with more tariffs if the deal isn't being stuck to. But I think, we're going to be playing this math game all through next year because at the end of the day, we're not really going to know potentially until after the election next November whether China has lived up to its end of the deal, which again is part of the political genius potentially of this deal.